Hello, I am Beck. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be drawing a character from my book When Lambs Grow Fangs. And I'm a little bit nervous to share this information with you, just because it's taken a really long time to write the book. And I'm still kind of going through final edits, but hopefully when this video is posted, it will be available for purchase. But let's get started. I decided to roll the dice to determine which character I would be drawing, and I got a 12, which means I'm drawing Fern, aka Fern Finnegan. She's not one of the main characters, which I was a little bit glad about because I didn't want to be drawing a character that, when I describe them, gives away part of the plot. Fern is the sister of one of the main characters, and she only appears in the book once or twice. So I think it's pretty safe to talk about her and her background and what she's all about. So Fern's main characteristic, I guess you'd say, is that she is a Dryad. Well, part Dryad, part human, but she's really taken on her mother's magical qualities in that she can turn into a tree when she feels like it and be a humanish woman when she doesn't feel like it. I say humanish because in my lore, in the magical sort of world, Dryads they have some qualities of the tree that they can turn into. So Fern, unsurprisingly, can turn into a fern tree, and they can get really big. They can get like 15 meters tall. So when she's in her human form, she is much taller than your average person. So 6.5 feet tall, probably, just sort of towering over your average person, especially for a woman. She's very into animals and nature. Not all of my Dryad characters are like that. Some of them are a little bit more glamazon, but she is very like, part of her inspiration, or part of the inspiration I had for her, was like a hot female Hagrid. So she really connects with animals, and she likes just being in the forest and running through the wilderness. So she's a little bit wild, but she's also a little bit of a farm girl. So she's got both of those aspects going on for her. She does some farming, she works at her family's farm, and she also is just connected with nature. So she'll disappear for weeks at a time just on her family's property. Sometimes she's a tree, sometimes she's a woman. She's always just like observing nature, enjoying nature. She's a very laid back, chill kind of person. In the book, I do describe her hair as being wild. So I was trying to incorporate that of like, it's a little bit curly, but more than curly, it's like got bits of twigs and leaves in it. There are parts where she's braided it and then given up, or like some parts that are a little bit like dreadlocky, but not all of her hair, like wild. Like she doesn't care about her hair. It's just what it is. So the sketches I've done here, I didn't feel like I pushed them far enough. So in a little bit, you'll see me really push it to the max. I think realistically, when I picture her in my head, her hair is somewhere between the ones you're looking at right now and the ones that I ended up sticking with. But, yeah, I wanted it to be maximum crazy just for the sketch to really capture her character visually. Obviously, when it's in a book, you get her character more like verbally and through watching her actions and that sort of thing. But when it's just a static image, you really have to convey the information as quickly as possible. So push it as far as you can. And this is where the hair comes in. I wanted to get the shape more than the details, so I decided to just use a really thick brush and make it crazy. I also took a little bit of inspiration from the way that a fern tree's leaves actually like splay out and go kind of everywhere. So when she's standing up, she does kind of still resemble a little bit just the silhouette of a fern tree. I'll put a little picture up here just to show what I'm talking about. But yeah, I wanted it to not look too much like a tree because she is a woman in this form. But also, yeah, if someone told you that she's just come from hanging out in the woods for a month, you'd believe it. Just from looking at her, all this bits of sticks and leaves and things that are in her hair. But then I wanted, like, the overalls. You know I love some overalls, so I had her wearing some nice overalls that she would probably have like 3 or 4 pairs of overalls and random t-shirts that she's gotten from like a op shop or whatever you call them in America, thrift stores. So all of her clothes are very patchy, and she's like ripped them and then sewn them back together, and she doesn't care about fashion either, so she's basically going for the practicality of having overalls and t-shirts and things like that, things that make it easier to climb trees and like crawl around on the floor of a forest area, or to jump off a rope into a lake, you know, that kind of thing. Just like cool forest girl stuff. That's what she's all about. I don't think that she's particularly a reading kind of girl. Like, she's not a cozy cottage person. She does prefer the outdoors. So camping, right up her alley. Staying in a cottage when it's raining outside with a cup of tea and a book sounds like hell to her because it's so boring. There probably aren't any animals, and if they are, it would just be like one dog. And I mean, she loves dogs, but she also loves all of the animals in the forest, and so she feels deprived. If anything, she would go out when it's raining because she'd ignore the rain and just be like, different animals are out right now and it's fun to like splash around in puddles and feel the rain hitting my skin and that kind of thing. She's one of those. I'd say she also does a little bit of witchcraft. Like, she's probably part of some local covens, but the kind of witchcraft that's like nature worshipping and working with the sun and the moon and incorporating just like the elements of nature into magic that helps balance things. So maybe if there's been a really long drought, she would participate in a coven circle that brings on some rain, something like that. And yeah, I wanted to incorporate her with this little, I think it's a ringtail possum or sugar glider. Have her hanging out with a sugar glider because she's always going to be distracted if there's an animal nearby. So I wanted to have her connecting with an animal, doing something that's very her rather than just sort of standing there. I did describe her also as having, I think, dark skin. I'll have to get the quote up, but she has dark skin, but it's also like sun affected. So like tanned, but then more tanned because she's been in the sun. So rather than have her be quite black, which with a lot of the dryads they do, their skin resembles the bark of whatever tree that they can turn into. So her mother has more of a mottled skin. I forget what that's called in terms of like when it's sort of brown and white patches. I'll put the word up on the screen. If you know what I'm talking about, you already know what I mean. But I didn't want to use the same shade as the trunk of a fern tree because that's very dark. And in addition to wanting to be able to demonstrate how often she's in the sun by giving her like a little bit of burning blush on her face that wouldn't show up the darker her skin is, I also wanted to incorporate that like her father is a redheaded Scotsman. So that needs to come in somewhere, I felt. So like the green eyes and also having lighter skin than she would have if she'd been like a pure dryad. yeah, I just felt like it was more appropriate for Fern's character to have that sort of mixed race, lighter skin, but also not light skin. Like some of her siblings have just like straight up white skin, just like their dad. Some have mottled skin like their mum based on what tree they can turn into. And in the lore that I've created, only the females can turn into trees, and the males are more druids than dryads, so they have a connection to nature. They just can't turn into trees. In that regard, I did stay pretty close to the traditional lore or folklore of a dryad based on the research that I did. I did a lot of research into a lot of magical creatures because the world that I'm creating has all of them, and based on where the like folklores are coming from, that's where those creatures live, because that just seems like common sense to me. But with dryads, most of the stories seem to be about a beautiful woman who can disappear in a forest or turn into a tree in a forest, and it was never about, like, men did not do it. So I think there was a point where I was tempted to like gender neutralize this story and have all of the creatures, even though almost every creature that turns from an inanimate object or an animal or something, they always turn into a beautiful woman or a terrifying woman, like an old woman, which of course is terrifying. They very rarely seem to turn into men, and I think that's because a lot of these stories came from the moral of the story is for men to just leave women alone. So, you know, like you hear the siren, it's a woman minding her own business, sitting on a rock in the ocean, singing, and if a man tries to approach her, his ship will crash and he'll die. Or like with a dryad, she'll lead you off the path and then you'll be lost in the forest forever, or she'll eat you, or, you know, things like that, where they'll take a child or a woman or something that's considered innocent, usually the victim, and they'll turn it on its head to be like, hey, guess what, guys? Maybe you shouldn't be so careless with just like assuming you're the predator in every situation. That seems to be the gist of most folklores and most creatures. I didn't want it to always be that case, but in this case, dryads are always female. I did incorporate into my book, not in a huge way, but it does sort of reference that it exists, a ritual for transgender transformation. So in the same way that if a human is born into a body that is the wrong sex, that it's a biological issue that they just need a surgery to correct it and hormones and things. In the magical community, where you'll say a dryad born to a dryad and a druid, and you think that you should be a druid instead, or vice versa, there is a magical way to correct that. So when I say that only females can be dryads and turn into trees, if you're born male, and so you sort of only have the gifts of a druid, but you identify as female, you can undergo a ritual that will change your body and also your magical powers, because that's part of your body, to do that kind of thing. But in the case of Fern, she's a cis woman and she's very happy with her body and with her life. I think her most important thing is her family. So she's very loyal and faithful to, like, she's supportive working on the farm. I don't think she gets paid to work on the farm. I think it's more a case of like, she just doesn't want to leave home. And so she's supporting that sort of farm community. So the profits of the farm are her profits as well, because she's part of the family. And she's a part of a big family. I didn't even get into the Finnegans, like all the Finnegans. Oh my god. But she's part of a big family. And yeah, this is her. This is Fern Finnegan. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Fern, and if you'd be interested in seeing me draw some more characters from my book.